Hi there. Okay, another new EllieBelle. Been cranking out the EllieBelles lately. So, Mike, here's your guitar at long last. Well, this guitar is called the Jupitar, which I named because I was laying up the wood of the back, and it kept reminding me of something. I'm like, I've seen pictures of this texture before, and it is Jupiter. This guitar looks like Jupiter to me. It even has, let's see if I can show this. It even has the little spots, the storms on Jupiter. Some dust, just like Jupiter has. This is Brazilian rosewood, and it's a very unusual set. Lots of reds, almost tending towards a greenish hue in the in some of the wood too. So it's got black, it's got orange, it's got red, and it's got this white. Well, white. It's sapwood. It's sort of a cream colored area in the middle. I don't know. It's just a pretty cool rosewood. The sides are from the same board. They're slightly different texture, but you can tell it's the same tree because of that unique coloration. So Brazilian rosewood back and sides. The top is Sinker Redwood, and this Sinker Redwood, I don't know the history of it. I bought it from a guy up in Northern California in billet form and cut it down, and it's probably was spent some time at the bottom of a lake or of a river, and during the time it was down there, it soaked up some minerals, and that's what gives it this distinctive coloration. With these blackish stripes. So it really kind of complements the back. I'm just talking about aesthetics here at the moment. And it's nicely quartered sawn, so it has some really beautiful figure in it. You can see when wood's perfectly cut radially to the tree, you can see these long medullary rays, these cells that communicate radially in the tree. And we call it silking on the top of a guitar. This has a lot of silking. And it's bound in curly koa. So it's a very earthy or Jupiter-y looking guitar. And then simply appointed with with just some curly maple for the purfling. I really like that look. It just looks so woody. Oh, and then this is kind of cool. I usually, I did my usual rosette with Pau Ferro, with Pau Abalone. It's just a jumble in here, you guys. With Pau Abalone, and I usually put a mother of pearl diamond in here, but this one I used curly maple. The same with the headstock. I used curly maple, and I really like that. I kind of like that look, and I may be heading that way in general. Then Mike, the owner of this guitar, asked me to make something slightly different besides my 3 dots. So I made these 3 little squares of come on, Ben. It's called ebony. 3 little squares of ebony bound in maple. I'm sorry. Ebony tuners. So here's the deal. We're actually going to put some fossil walrus ivory pins here, and a tail pin. And I've never used fossil walrus ivory before. It's really beautiful. It's really expensive. You gotta really want it. And I'm interested. I'm really curious to see if it changes the sound when it comes here, because of course if it's truly fossilized, it's basically mineralized, so it's got to be very hard and probably heavy. I'm interested to see what it's going to do to the sound. Maybe I'll do another video then. But in the meantime, I'll play a little bit on this thing, and you can hear the sound just explodes out of this guitar. It's really quite light. My plates, the back and top, I make them thin, and that makes a light guitar. The sides are thin as well. My neck, I'm always looking for light mahogany. I do not like a heavy guitar. I've made heavy guitars that I think sound great, but there's something about holding a really light guitar, and there's something about the responsiveness of a really light guitar that a heavy guitar just doesn't have. It's a different experience. and I like this one. So it's kind of what I'm headed for. The sound, like I said, it just goes boom. It just comes right out of here. I know you're saying, just play the thing, right? Okay, I will. Quite a bit of sustain again. You know, the rosewood. I mean, Brazilian rosewood is, everyone calls it the holy grail of guitar woods, and it's certainly, you're not going to go wrong with Brazilian rosewood. it's got a certain sparkle to it that no other woods really have. I've never done Brazilian with redwood, sinker redwood. The sinker redwood, it's as if it's slightly denatured when it's underwater doing its thing. Ordinarily, so just the working quality of it, like the regular redwood, when you're working it, tends to be very fibrous. And so, for instance, when I'm routing the channels that the binding goes in or the rosette goes in, you got to be careful because fibers can get pulled up, and the fibers are like little pieces of rope, and they will want to tear down into the wood. That's on regular redwood. On sinker redwood, they're not. The fibers are shortened, so that the tools cut extremely cleanly in it. It's really kind of cool. I was thinking, you know, does that mean that because the fibers are shortened and denatured, that it's more likely to snap in the long grain? And I've messed around with it. It still seems to retain its strength. I mean, redwood is by no means one of the strongest woods in the world, but you know, long grain, it goes pretty well, certainly adequately for musical instruments. So some process that's beyond the scope of my understanding is happening to the wood there. And let's see, I've done maybe half a dozen or a dozen, no, probably 6 or 7 sinker redwood guitars. And this is the one I like the best. This one sounds the most like regular redwood to me. I love regular redwood. Redwood seems to me like the compromise between spruce and cedar. It's a little more powerful and brighter than cedar, a little woodier than spruce. And this guitar is brand spanking new. It's like 2 days old. I strung it up the day before yesterday. And I strung it up right away. It sounded good. A lot of times with spruce guitars, there's sort of this, you string it up and so much happens in the first 48 hours it settles in and the tone starts to develop. You know, they don't often sound their best in the first couple of days. This one sounds pretty good right off the bat, and I have nothing but hope for its future. One thing about it is it's got this really, really present top end. So penetrating, but it's still warm. It's penetrating without being sharp and pointy. It's a big, fat sound. It almost sounds like an archtop, electrified archtop guitar. I'm really stoked about it. Oh, another thing, this guitar is braced with Redwood as well, which is not a usual wood for bracing flat tops. Usually people use spruce. That's sort of the tradition. And I had this one particular chunk of Redwood that was really... I test I do deflection testing on all my woods, and just sort of to see, it's sort of the thing you can sort of tell with your hand, but I like to have a little bit more of an objective reading. So I made this jig where I put my brace stock, also my tops and backs, and I'm able to determine how much they're deflecting under a fixed load of weight. And this gives you a little more consistency in the sound of your guitars, I think. Anyway, this Redwood for the bracing was it was 70% the weight of my Sitka spruce, which is very stiff, my stiffest Sitka, and yet it was just barely less stiff. So I was able to get some weight reduction on the top and maintain the same stiffness. So that's always a good thing. More stiff and more light. That's always my goal. So anyway, there it is, the Jupitar. And he's going to be off to his new owner very soon. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.